Have you ever felt that something inside you remains wounded despite all your efforts to move forward? That feeling that accompanies you like a silent shadow, affecting your relationships, your self-esteem, and your connection with the divine. Today we're going to talk about something that can completely change your life, healing your inner child, that essential core of your being which, according to Jung, contains the key to reconnecting with the divine. Think about it for a moment. When was the last time you allowed yourself to be vulnerable? When was the last time you truly listened to that part of you that's still hurting from past experiences? If you struggle to remember, you're not alone. Most of us have learned to ignore these aspects, to bury them in the depths of what Jung called the unconscious. Carl Jung, one of the most revolutionary thinkers in modern psychology, understood something fundamental. We cannot truly connect with the divine, with our spiritual essence, until we heal the fragmented parts of our being. And the most important of these parts is our inner child, that aspect of ourselves that contains our spontaneity, creativity, and capacity for wonder, but also our deepest wounds. Today's world is designed to keep us distracted, to pull us away from our inner selves. Social media, constant work, external demands, everything pushes us outward, moving us away from that sacred space where our inner child dwells. But here's the truth Jung discovered. Every time you ignore that inner voice, every time you deny your emotions or repress your needs to please others, you're deepening the wound, widening the gap between your conscious self and your connection with the divine. Jung spoke of individuation, that process by which we become complete, integrated beings. And this process begins precisely with the recognition and healing of that inner child. Why? Because it's in that part of us where the seed of our authenticity lies, the door to our soul, and ultimately to the divine. Think about the decisions you've made lately. How many of them have truly been yours? And how many have been driven by unconscious patterns, by unhealed wounds that lead you to repeat destructive cycles? Jung invited us to reflect on this because he knew that until we recognize and heal those wounded parts, we will remain prisoners of our past, unable to truly connect with our divine essence. The inner child is not an abstract concept. It is a psychic reality, a living presence within you. Jung discovered it through his own process of self-discovery, by confronting his dreams, his shadows, those parts of himself he had denied. And what he found was astonishing. Within each of us lives that childlike, vulnerable aspect, which contains both our deepest wounds and our most precious gifts. How do you know if your inner child needs healing? Observe your relationships. Do you tend to attract people who make you feel the way you felt in your childhood? Do you repeat patterns that feel familiar, even though they cause you pain? Do you struggle to establish healthy boundaries? According to Jung, these are clear signs that there are parts of you that remain trapped in the past, waiting to be heard, recognized, and healed. But here comes the powerful part. Healing your inner child doesn't simply mean reliving the past. It's not about blaming your parents or circumstances. Jung was very clear about this. It's about an alchemical process of transformation, where you recognize the wound, embrace it with compassion, and integrate it into your conscious being. And when this happens, something extraordinary occurs. You begin to feel a reconnection with something greater than yourself, with that dimension Jung called the numinous, the divine. Connection with the divine from the Jungian perspective is not something external, not something you must seek in rituals or dogmas. It's within you, in that sacred space where your soul finds its most authentic expression. But you can only access it when you have healed the wounds that keep you fragmented, when you have integrated your inner child into your conscious being. Jung spoke of the self as that organizing center of the psyche, that point where the personal and the universal meet. And for him, the path to that self, to that connection with the divine, inevitably passes through confrontation with our shadows, with those denied parts of ourselves. Among these shadows, the wounded child occupies a central place. Imagine for a moment that you could talk to that child you once were. What would you say to her? What did she need to hear that she never heard? Jung developed techniques like active imagination precisely to facilitate this internal dialogue, this healing encounter with our fragmented parts. Because he knew that in that encounter, in that internal reconciliation, lies the key to our integration and ultimately to our connection with the divine. One of the most revealing things Jung discovered is that our childhood wounds are not just personal. They are connected to what he called the collective unconscious, that repository of shared memory and experience that transcends the individual. This means that in healing your inner child, you are not only healing yourself, you are participating in a process of collective healing, contributing to the evolution of human consciousness. Have you ever wondered why certain patterns repeat in your life, despite your best intentions? Jung would explain it through complexes, those knots of psychic energy that form around traumatic experiences. When your inner child has been wounded, a complex forms that continues to act from the unconscious, influencing your decisions, your relationships, your way of seeing yourself. And until you recognize and heal that complex, you will continue to repeat the same patterns, continue to distance yourself from your true essence, from your connection with the divine. The good news is that Jung left us a map for this healing process. It's not an easy path, but it's profoundly transformative. It begins with what he called confrontation with the shadow, that act of courage where we dare to look at what we have denied, what we have repressed. And in the case of the inner child, it means recognizing the pain, the loneliness, the abandonment you may have experienced, but also the strength, the resilience, the capacity for wonder that you never lost. Imagine that your inner child is like a closed room within your being. You've kept that door blocked because what's behind it frightens you, hurts you. But Jung invites us to open that door, to enter that sacred space with awareness and compassion. And the amazing thing is that when you do, when you dare to meet that wounded part of yourself, you discover that alongside the pain there is a treasure. Your authenticity, your creativity, your capacity for genuine connection. Everything you need to reconnect with the divine. This healing process doesn't happen overnight. Jung knew this well. It requires time, patience, and an unwavering willingness to know yourself at increasingly deeper levels. But what you gain in return is invaluable. A sense of integrity, of wholeness, a reconnection. How can you begin this process? Jung offered us several tools. One is to pay attention to your dreams, those windows to the unconscious where your inner child often communicates with you. Another is active imagination, that conscious dialogue with the parts of yourself you have denied. And perhaps the most important, the attitude of radical honesty with yourself. That willingness to look at your life, your relationships, your patterns with new eyes, ready to discover the truth that lies beneath the surface. Jung discovered something fascinating. Many of our childhood wounds are related to what he called archetypes, those primordial images that form part of the collective unconscious. The archetype of the mother, the father, the divine child, all of them influence how we experience our childhood and how we relate to ourselves and others. And when one of these archetypal relationships is distorted, when we don't receive what we need from the maternal or paternal archetype, our inner child is wounded and our connection with the divine is obstructed. This brings us to a crucial point. Healing your inner child also implies reconciling with these archetypes, finding new ways of relating to the maternal and paternal, both inside and outside yourself. Jung taught us that each of us carries these internalized archetypes, and that part of the individuation process consists of transforming these relationships, of finding new ways to nurture, protect, and guide ourselves. Think about how you talk to yourself when you make a mistake. Is your inner voice critical and punishing, as perhaps a strict parent was? Or is it understanding and loving, like the mother or father you perhaps needed but didn't have? Jung would invite us to observe these inner voices, to recognize their archetypal origin, and to consciously transform them. Because, in that transformation, in that act of becoming your own loving mother, your own protective father, lies the key to healing your inner child and reconnecting with the divine. One of Jung's most profound insights was that many of our psychological problems are, in reality, spiritual problems. The disconnection from the divine, from that numinous dimension of existence, leaves us with a void that we try to fill in multiple ways. Dependent relationships, addictions, constant seeking of external validation. But none of these strategies works because what we really need is to heal that primordial wound that separated us from our essence. And this is where the healing of the inner child becomes truly revolutionary. Because in reconciling with that part of yourself, in integrating it into your conscious being, you are also restoring your capacity for connection with the numinous, with that sacred dimension of existence that Jung considered essential for a full and meaningful life. Have you noticed how children naturally live in wonder? How they perceive magic in the everyday, how they spontaneously connect with beauty, with life, with what we might call the divine. This capacity doesn't disappear when we grow up. It simply gets buried under layers of conditioning, wounds, adaptations. And in healing your inner child, you recover that capacity. You reconnect with that direct, intuitive perception of the sacred that is present in every aspect of life. Jung observed that many of his patients, as they advanced in their process of individuation, as they healed their childhood wounds, experienced a renewed connection with the spiritual. Not necessarily in traditional religious terms, but as a direct experience of the numinous, of that dimension of mystery and meaning that transcends the merely personal. And this connection was not something they had to seek outside. It emerged naturally from within, like water that flows once obstacles have been removed. The archetype of the divine child, which Jung studied in depth, represents precisely this capacity for renewal, for reconnection with the sacred. It is the symbol of our innate potential, of that divine spark we carry within, and that can never be completely extinguished, no matter how painful our experiences have been. And in healing your inner child, you are in fact revitalizing that archetype of the divine child within you, allowing that spark to become a flame that illuminates your path toward a more authentic and spiritually connected life. One of Jung's most beautiful teachings is that suffering, when consciously traversed, becomes the portal to greater wisdom, to a deeper connection with the divine. Your childhood wounds, seen from this perspective, are not simply obstacles to overcome. They are invitations to a process of alchemical transformation, where the lead of pain is transmuted into the gold of expanded consciousness. Imagine for a moment that each wound of your inner child is like a crack in a vase. You could see those cracks as defects, as reasons to discard it. Or you could do what the Japanese art of kintsugi suggests, repair those cracks with gold, turning the imperfections into part of the vase's unique beauty. Jung invites us to do exactly that with our wounds, to recognize them, to heal them, and to integrate them as part of our unique beauty, our unique path to the divine. The amazing thing is that when you begin this healing process, when you dare to meet your inner child and listen to what she has to tell you, you discover that you have never truly been alone. Jung spoke of the internal witness, that loving and wise presence that is always available within us. Some call it the higher self, others the self, others simply the divine spark. The name doesn't matter as much as the experience, that feeling of being accompanied, guided, sustained by something greater than your ego, by that dimension of your being that is always connected with the divine. And here is where the healing of the inner child and reconnection with the divine meet in a perfect circle. Because in healing that vulnerable part of yourself, in integrating it into your conscious being, you are opening the channel for that divine presence, that internal witness to manifest more fully in your life. And in turn, that connection with the divine provides you with the love, wisdom, and strength you need to continue your healing process. Jung discovered something that spiritual traditions have known for millennia, that the true purpose of our life is not to accumulate successes or possessions, but to realize that process of individuation, of integration, that leads us to recognize and manifest our divine nature. And the healing of the inner child is an essential part of that path, perhaps the most important, because it is where we begin to undo the knots that keep us trapped in limiting patterns, in a fragmented perception of ourselves and of reality. Have you noticed how your relationships change when you begin to heal your childhood wounds? Jung observed this phenomenon again and again in his clinical practice. As his patients integrated their fragmented parts, as they healed their inner child, their relationships transformed. They no longer sought in others what they lacked within. They no longer projected their unhealed wounds onto their partners or friends. Instead, they began to relate from a place of greater integrity, greater authenticity, greater capacity for true love. And this has a direct impact on your connection with the divine, because, as Jung understood, our relationship with the transcendent is deeply influenced by our early relationships, especially with our parental figures. If you experienced abandonment, rejection, or abuse in your childhood, you likely have difficulties trusting in a loving and protective divine presence. But when you heal those wounds, when you reconcile with your inner child, you are also healing your... But Jung also offered us other tools: art, writing, movement, any form of creative expression that allows your unconscious to communicate. When was the last time you allowed yourself to draw without worrying about the result? Or dance as if no one was watching? Or write from that deep place where the critical mind falls silent? These activities are not mere pastimes. They are bridges to your inner child, to that part of you that yearns to be heard, recognized, integrated. One of the most beautiful paradoxes that Jung discovered is that our deepest wounds also contain our most precious gifts. It's as if life, in its infinite wisdom, sowed seeds of light in our darkest moments. Many artists, healers, visionaries have found their purpose precisely in the areas where they were most wounded. Not despite their wounds, but through them, transformed by the process of awareness and healing. What gifts, what unique talents, what special capacities does your inner child carry? Jung would invite us to explore this question not as a mental exercise, but as a deep immersion into our interior, a genuine dialogue with those parts of ourselves that have remained in the shadow. Because it is there, in that brave and compassionate exploration, where we find not only healing, but also our unique purpose, our unique contribution to the world, our unique way of manifesting the divine through our humanity. One of Jung's most revolutionary concepts was that of synchronicity, those seemingly casual events that are loaded with meaning, that seem to connect our inner world with the outer in ways that transcend ordinary causality. And the fascinating thing is that as you advance in your healing process, as you integrate your inner child and reconnect with the divine, these synchronicities become more frequent, more evident, as if the universe itself were responding to your internal process, guiding you, confirming that you are on the right path. Have you ever experienced that feeling that everything fits, that you are exactly where you should be, doing exactly what you should be doing? Jung would describe this as a moment of alignment with yourself, with that organizing center of your psyche that is always connected with the divine. And these moments become more frequent, more sustained, as you advance in your process of healing and integration. What Jung ultimately offers us is a vision of life as a sacred journey of self-discovery and transformation. A journey that begins with the act of courage to face our shadows, to heal our inner child, and that gradually leads us toward greater integration, toward a deeper connection with the divine, toward a way of living that is both more authentic and more transcendent. This journey is not easy. It requires courage, honesty, perseverance. It requires that we be willing to question our limiting beliefs, to challenge our habitual patterns, to venture into unknown territories of our being. But as Jung discovered, and as many have confirmed since then, the fruits of this journey are incomparable. A sense of wholeness, of purpose, of connection with something greater than ourselves, that no external success or material possession can match. Are you ready for this journey? Are you willing to meet your inner child, to listen to her wounds, her unmet needs, but also her gifts, her dreams, her natural connection with the divine? You don't have to do it alone. Jung reminded us of the importance of having guides in this process, whether therapists, spiritual mentors, or simply people who have walked this path before you and can share their experience, their wisdom. And remember, this process is not linear. There will be moments of clarity and moments of confusion, moments of advance and moments of apparent retreat. Jung described it as a spiral, where we revisit the same themes at increasingly deeper levels of understanding and healing. What matters is not perfection or speed, but sincerity, authenticity, commitment. Before concluding, I want to leave you with an invitation. Take a moment right now to connect with your inner child. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable, breathe deeply, and visualize that child you once were. How old is she? What does she look like? What does she need from you right now? You don't have to resolve everything at once. It's enough to establish that first contact, to open that channel of communication that, with time and practice, will become stronger, clearer, more healing. Jung taught us that the unconscious is always trying to communicate with us, to guide us toward greater integration, toward a deeper connection with the divine. And your inner child is one of the most important messengers of that unconscious. Listen to her. Honor her wounds, celebrate her gifts, allow her to guide you toward that reconnection with the sacred that is your birthright, your ultimate destiny. If this message has resonated with you, if you feel that inner call to embark on this journey of healing and reconnection, I want you to know that you are not alone. There are many of us walking this path, rediscovering that wisdom that Jung so beautifully articulated, but that in reality has been available to humanity since time immemorial. It's time to conclude, but before I do, I want to ask you something. If this video has touched you, if it has ignited that spark of recognition within you, share it with someone who you think might benefit from it. Not because I want more views or subscribers, but because I deeply believe in the transformative power of these teachings. As Jung himself said, the healing of one is the healing of many, and each person who undertakes this journey of reconnection with their inner child and with the divine contributes to the collective healing that our world so desperately needs. Let me know in the comments which part of this message has resonated most deeply with you, what questions have arisen, what insights you've had. This space is not just for sharing information, but for creating community, for supporting each other in this beautiful and challenging journey back home, to our authentic being, to our connection with the divine. Thank you for being here, for your openness, for your courage. Remember that each step you take toward healing your inner child is also a step toward reconnection with your divine essence. And that journey, though sometimes difficult, is the most important you will ever undertake. As Jung taught us, it is the journey toward the person you are meant to be, toward the life you are meant to live, toward the unique contribution that only you can make to the world. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, may Jung's wisdom, your inner child's love, and the light of the divine accompany you in every step of the way. Remember, healing your inner child is the foundation for healing your connection with the divine, and that process begins now with your decision to listen, to recognize, to embrace all the parts of you that have been waiting to be remembered, to be loved, to be integrated into the beautiful wholeness that you are.